You have found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, we're going to talk what is the biggest issue facing the Chicago Bulls right now. Is it the team shooting or the defense, or is it something else? We're going to look at that. Plus, Lonzo Ball is going to miss tonight's game against the Milwaukee Bucks. We're going to talk about all and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcasts. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, y'all. So the Chicago Bulls' first game of the season left a lot to be desired from a lot of Chicago Bulls fans. While we saw that dynamic offense that the Chicago Bulls have been trying to instill through the majority of the first half, I would actually say probably about halfway through the second quarter is when the Bulls started. You started seeing signs of, hey, are the Bulls going to devolve back into some things we saw over the last couple of years? Then, of course, in the entirety of the second half, the Bulls devolved back, right? But then on top of that as well, one of the things that the defense was absolutely atrocious, right? And so what is the biggest issue right now? The Chicago Bulls, who didn't shoot the ball well from three at all, they did take 34 shots, so they get some credit for that. 34 three-pointers, I should say. They took 86 shots overall in the game. But they shot 29% from three, right? And we've talked before about over the last few years how the Chicago Bulls find themselves behind the eight ball a lot when it comes to scoring output because it's a simple math problem. Unfortunately, the Bulls do not hit three-point shots at a rate that they give up, right? And so that creates this huge discrepancy. Now, the thing with the last few years from the Chicago Bulls, not really last year, but the Bulls, for the most part, under Billy Donovan, have been a solid defensive team. We've ranked in the top 5, we've ranked in the top 10, we've dropped into the low 20s, right? And so what is the biggest issue? Is the defense or the shooting going to be the biggest issue for this team? Now, this story is going to we're going to know the details as we see this season continue and go on, right? Like, we don't know 100% fact yet of what it's going to look like for the Chicago Bulls. So, that is there, right, for them to figure it out over the course of this season. But if I had to put my money on it, it's more so the defense is the biggest issue, because I think with the Bulls playing the fastest pace that they have in a while, right, they were on pace. I mean, we're not even on pace. In the last game, they had more possessions than what they've had in like 90% of the game since Billy Donovan's been the head coach. The new pace of the Chicago Bulls is legit, right? It is legit. They are getting more shots up. They're getting more possessions. And that's something that the Bulls just haven't done. And so even if the Bulls aren't necessarily shooting a huge amount of threes, 108 possessions they had. 108 possessions they had. Now, we already talked about it. Over 20 of those possessions, unfortunately, ended in turnovers for the Chicago Bulls, right? So, that you got to look at. But, overall, the Bulls are going to generate more possessions. And so I look at that and say, they'll generate the possessions, I think, enough to stay in. But your defense has to be better. Now, make no mistake about it. The Bulls do not have the roster to be a top, I would even say 12 defense in the league, right? But I do think through scheming and through better execution, right? Because we saw the 2-3 zone used by the Chicago Bulls in that last game, and the players basically looked lost out there when they were in that 2-3 zone. Those are the things you have to try to eliminate, right? And one of the biggest downsides, as well as this starting lineup, is that the Bulls have no communicator on the defensive side of the ball in the starting lineup. And really, we only really have probably two that are really good communicational defenders on the team. That's Lonzo and Ayo. Now, Torrey Craig, as a vet, can do some of that, right? Veterans, to a degree, like they can talk, they can communicate out there. But when you really look at somebody who just has that basketball IQ, that can rally the team together defensively and communicate, like, hey, hedge here, whatever it is, right? We only got two of those guys, and one of them in Lonzo Ball is on a minutes restriction right now and is on a back-to-backs restriction. So, that really puts the team behind the eight ball on that defensive side of the ball. But like I've said many times before, most of defense is effort, right? effort and execution. Even if you're not necessarily the best or most instinctual defender one-on-one, if you give the consistent effort, if you execute the scheme correctly, which we did not see the Bulls do, in not being able to complete a 2-3 zone to save their life, you can be okay defensively. And I think that this is a team for the Chicago Bulls that if they can just get to the place of being, and I would say if you can be 18 to 20th defensively, right, that still puts you in the bottom third of the league. If you can just be that, well, lower half to bottom third of the league, if you can just do that, I think that this team is going to generate enough possessions to where it can balance out some. Again, I still don't think the Bulls win a whole lot of games in doing that, but that's just something that you got to see how this is going to develop for this team, because the things that I saw from the Chicago Bulls defensively in that game are inexcusable for NBA defense. It's just inexcusable, right? And we saw Stacey King, or heard Stacey King call it out for those that were able to watch the game, and him saying like you've played a zone before. You've done it either in college, you've done it some in the NBA, right? Like, yeah, you just started practicing it as it being a heavy part of your defensive scheme, but like you got to be better than this. And it'll come with time as well, hopefully, right? And as this team kind of works out its balance and things like that, I hope that that's going to really work out for this team as well. You got to get the defense together. But let's make no mistake about it. The shooting is going to be a problem as well, right? Getting efficient offense. And that's where the Bulls, especially in playing faster, that's going to be probably a slower story to develop here, is that, yeah, you can get more possessions, but are they quality possessions, right? Or are you just getting down the court and just taking the first shot, right? Again, they're not running 7 seconds or less. They're not running run a gun. They're just moving more up tempo, right? And one of the few, many things that I've seen from this Bulls team in the last game and the first game of the season that really concerned me is that how quickly we went away from moving off the ball, right? Because that's an important part, especially when you're trying to move quicker, you're trying to get the ball around and spread those things out. Is that, and Zach Levine did it for the first half, right? He was very good at it. He was one of the reasons he was so impactful in that first half for the Chicago Bulls. But you got to move without the ball, because that creates easy opportunities for you, right? Especially with the passers that we have, right? With having Josh Giddey, with having Lonzo Ball in the games that Lonzo plays, they're going to be able, and even Vooch, right? Now that Vooch has a little bit more space, right? If you move, Vooch is going to get you the ball, right? Giddey's going to get you the ball. Lonzo's going to get you the ball. I trust to get you the ball, especially in transition, half court. You want Kobe more in the half court, right? I think that's a balance between Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White as far as who's running the point, right? Like in that case, who's doing the distributing. But you got the guys that can do it. You got the passers on this team, right? You got to move without the ball, because while we have passers, we only got a couple of playmakers, those that generate open shots for the teammates. But we got a team that can pass the ball. But you make it so easy on the defense to get the steals when you stop moving off the ball. And I feel like a broken record already. We're 2 games into the season, and I'm already saying some of the same things I've been saying for the last 3 years, right? 1 game. Let's see what we do tonight against the Milwaukee Bucks. This is a team that has its defensive players, but isn't the greatest defense in the world. Let's make no mistake about that. But the Bulls, I want to see how much do they improve on certain things in this second game. How many things start moving in a better direction for this team than what happened in the last game, right? And I'm not expecting you to fix everything from 1 game or 1 game, right? I'm not expecting that. But I do want to see progress. Let's trust the system more, right? Are we making the routine things that we need to do routinely in this system? Are we actually doing those at a routine rate? Or does it still look like we're trying to force? Are we thinking too much out there? You want to think. You don't necessarily want to think too much. So this Bulls team gotta figure it out, man. And listen, I think we got the players for the offense to work itself out. The bigger concern I have is the defense. I just think that this is going to be a ugly, ugly defensive season for the Bulls. But we've seen teams with the right offensive system to match their defense. We've seen those teams still be able to win basketball games, right? You still look at it at the end and be like, damn, we gave up 140 points. That's a bit of an exaggeration. Then we gave up 118 points, but we scored 121. We got the win, right? And that goes back to some of those close game things that the Bulls could face in this season. And we'll just see, man. Like again, not to panic, not to worry, but to monitor. That's the thing right now. It's just to see how these things that we're seeing that could be problems for this team, to see how they develop, especially over this first 2 weeks, the first month of the season. And yeah, with the test that the Bulls have the first 6 weeks of the season, we'll really know where this team is probably going to end up sitting sooner rather than later, because it's not going to take a whole lot of time for the Bulls to start facing off against some of the better teams in this league. And at that point, we'll know exactly who the Chicago Bulls are and what they can be this season. But with that said, next up, I want to talk about Zach Levine and some of the trade rumors around Zach Levine already starting back up. How putting up some points can change some things with the conversation of a player. But before we get into that, we got to get into a message from Prize Picks. All right, Bulls fans, man, you guys, I already appreciate you guys for tuning in and making Locked On Bulls your first listen every single day. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long with Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more for your lineups. Think Justin Jefferson will get more than 83.5 yards next week? Christian McCaffrey run more than 75.5 yards? Cook up hot takes with your friends and win real money with the football season. And when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. Again, go to prizepicks.com to run your game. All right, Bulls fans, man, we want to thank you guys again for tuning in, making Locked On Bulls your first listen every single day. All right, I want to talk about this, and this is Zach Levine, right? And so one of the things coming into the season was, how does Zach Levine look, right? Is he engaged? Is he locked in? And in the first half of that game against the New Orleans Pelicans, Zach was absolutely locked in. And here's the thing. I'm not going to say that Zach wasn't locked in just because he played worse in the second half. I think he was locked in overall, right? And I think when you look at Zach, though, the 7 turnovers, which is 1/3 of the Bulls' overall turnovers at 21, but that's because he was doing a lot of ball handling things. Like, how many times, go and look at this game. There were so many times where Zach Levine was bringing the ball up and initiating the offense, right? And we've seen this. Like, the whole reason we initially signed Lonzo Ball was because Zach Levine isn't good at doing that. Despite starting his basketball journey off as a point guard, Zach Levine has not been that at the NBA level ever, right? And so I'm not to throw Zach any bell on that, because he has to be better with his decisions. You can't be turning the ball over. Shout out for Pat, the designer, who said that Zach Levine may just have oily hands, right? So, it is what it is when it comes down to that. But I think that when you start hearing now rumblings that, teams could be interested in Zach Levine. Watch it. Even Bleach Report had an article when it was the one storyline to watch for the Chicago Bulls this season was that, the Bulls get multiple first round picks back for Zach Levine. And it's like, how the tides turn, right? And it's going to be a story-long conversation, right? Until either the season ends or the Chicago Bulls outrightly say, we are not trading Zach Levine. There's going to be that trade talk speculation, wondering what the Chicago Bulls are going to do with Zach. And, he played, he looked better, he can be moved now. Is it going to be, the Lakers are reportedly back in, the Kings are in, they saw Zach Levine play, it's all noise at this point, right? And even us Bulls fans do it, and I'm saying us because I'm not separating us, right? As a collective, Bulls fans do it, right? How many just since the first game, how many Bulls fans do y'all personally know that said, I wonder if the Bulls need to move Patrick Williams, the Bulls need to move Zach Levine. Oh my God, Josh Giddey doesn't fit this team. We need to move off of him right now, right? It happens. As sports fans, we do it. Everybody does it. But the thing that just makes it feel a little disingenuous is that, to me, when you see writers, right? When you see these ESPN analysts, when you see the Bleacher Report writers, like the same people who spent all offseason talking about Zach Levine has no trade value. He shouldn't have any trade value. He's a player that can't shoot. He didn't do this. He can't stay healthy. He hates Billy Donovan. He doesn't want to be coach. And then now the things turn, right? And I used to, right? When I first started being a podcaster, I used to heavily look at a lot of fans and be like, hey, why y'all flip-flopping so much? But then I had to realize personally that, a lot of fans, they do get their information and they do get their finger on they feel like they have their finger on the pulse of the team based off what they read on Clutch Points, what they read on Bleacher Report, right? And I think we need to understand that a lot of these writers don't care about the team. They don't care about the player. They ain't really out for what's the best for the team or the player. They're out for the story. They're out for what's going to get your clicks, right? What's going to get Bulls fans to click on this article either and get some type of reaction to it, whether they love it or hate it or whatever, and generate conversation. And then they're going to go on social media, which then is going to generate more clicks to our article, because then people are going to wonder, why are you talking about this? Oh, yeah, Bleacher Report writer said that Zach Levine could be moved to the Los Angeles Lakers for 2 firsts and Austin Reed, when that's never happened, right? And I'm not one to say that Zach can't be moved this trade deadline. Anything's possible, right? But I think when it comes down to it is that we've seen, heard, and been through this. We've been through it last year. And I think until otherwise, and maybe that's just the perspective I'm deciding to take on this, and everybody can take their own, is that I'm looking at this and saying, until something gets done, and there's some actual rumblings, or we hear that the Bulls sit a healthy Zach Levine on a game day because they're trying to facilitate a trade that could be materializing, I'm not worried about Zach Levine being moved. Listen, there's not one trade or quick fix for this Bulls team. And that's the overarching thing with this. Let's stop thinking that there's going to be one fix. Let's stop thinking that moving Giddey, that moving Patrick Williams, that it's all of a sudden going to change this, right? It's not. It's not. There's not a quick fix coming for this Chicago Bulls team. And I hate to tell y'all this, even Cooper Flagg, right? For my Bulls fans that adamantly say, I see y'all in the comment section, that adamantly say every time, oh, the losses are really wins, because then we get Cooper. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to turn down getting Cooper Flagg on this team. If that's what happens, that's what happens. But it's still not a quick fix, because you still need the right coaching. You still need the right GM. You still need the right president of basketball operations to make the right moves to then put that team and build that team around whatever talent that you get that's sustainable, that you can then start winning basketball games. There's not a quick fix coming for this team. Now, you can get some talent in here, but then what do you look at AK doing with it, right? How do you view Billy Donovan and his success? Like, don't get me wrong, the talent gets you in the door. And sometimes talent can elevate bad coaching. Sometimes coaching can elevate bad talent or mediocre talent. It's hard to do a lot with bad talent. But that's where this thing sits, right? And maybe that's just my own personal view and perspective, but there's no quick fix coming. And the Zach Levine trade, I understand. Listen, I completely get the people that are overseeing Zach Levine play for the Chicago Bulls. I get it. I understand it. But it doesn't mean that anything better is coming. It doesn't mean that a fix is coming anytime soon, right? And yes, this team built around Zach Levine as a number one. I firmly believe that he showed us he isn't a number one. That doesn't mean that you still can't be your unproductive team. But for the people that say things like, oh, well, no team can ever win with Zach Levine, I'm sorry, I've seen teams. Listen, Tim Hardaway Jr. has been on some teams that won some things. So you can't tell me that you can't have a team with Zach Levine on it. Now, you can say that you can't have a team with it built around Zach Levine that can't go far, but you can have a team with Zach Levine on it that can go far. You just got to be a smart front office. And that's what it comes to. And that's why I say, like, I get why the trade speculation and talks coming back up from internally, externally. I understand it. That's where we are. That's what's going to happen. There's no way to stop that train, but it's not a quick fix for this Bulls team. It could actually provide some more direction, but it also could hurt. Could be, right? We don't know. We just don't know with this team. And, that comes from the uncertainty from every aspect of this team. There's uncertainty on the roster. There's uncertainty with the coaching staff. There's uncertainty with the front office. There's uncertainty with the ownership. There's uncertainty at every level. And until we start getting some clarity on those type of things, listen, I tell y'all, and Pat said it before, I get it. The people that came into the season, the Bulls fan that came into the season, I'm not saying this just because of the first game, For the Bulls fans that came into this season thinking that this team was going to win more games than what they did last year, even the ones that thought, oh, they can win 40-plus games. See how that goes. Because I tell you what, right now, it ain't looking too promising, play. It ain't looking too promising. But with that said, man, we're going to finish this out talking about Lonzo Ball, the update to him, and also the NBA Cup courts have been announced as well, have been revealed as well, the mock-ups at least. And I actually like the Chicago Bulls. It's not too different from last year's, but we're going to talk about that. But before we get into that, we got to get into the message from another one of our sponsors. And this time it's FanDuel. All right, Bulls fans, man, you guys already know FanDuel's been a consistent sponsor here at over at Locked On Bulls. We're appreciative of them. But you can start off the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. FanDuel is giving you a leg up by being able to see everything that you need to make an informed bet on the same page where you place your bets. You can just make that decision a little bit quicker, right? Pull the trigger on that gun to get your bet in, get your parlays in, whatever you're trying to do. You can get all the information you need to make an informed bet on the same page where you place your bets. Plus, when you get started with FanDuel, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 extra that you can bet with by only placing your first $5 bet when you sign up with FanDuel. Again, that's FanDuel.com to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Because some of y'all ain't got money to bet the way you're trying to bet. FanDuel's trying to help you out with that. Again, that's FanDuel.com to get $200 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. All right, Bulls fans, man. We want to, again, thank you guys for tuning in. You already know what it is. So Lonzo Ball has been ruled out for today's game against the Milwaukee Bucks. It's just part of the scheduled back-to-back rest that he's going to get. No harm, no foul there. Nothing really to worry about or be concerned about there. With this game being on the road against Milwaukee, while it is a short trip from Chicago, with them starting off the season on the road with two road games, probably get Lonzo a little bit more rest. I'm sure he'll probably still travel with the team in Milwaukee. And yeah, he'll play the second of a back-to-back Saturday against the OKC Thunder. And I think that's really good, right? I think that's a smart decision when it comes down to Lonzo Ball. I'm not too mad at it at all. Like when it just comes down to it, like we knew that coming into the season, the Bulls are going to be very protective over Lonzo Ball, as they should, right? And the Bulls have been consistent with saying this. This is Billy Donovan more so than the team, but in saying the fact that they want to make sure that they want to preserve Lonzo as much as possible. They want to make sure that Lonzo can have a long, productive career, that he's trying to make this comeback and do those type of things. So I think it just makes sense. It's good for Lonzo. I'm not mad at it at all. And, ultimately, this team still has enough depth to where we got plenty of players that we need to play. But it is going to be interesting to now see how they balance now, because it was when Josh Giddey was off the court, Lonzo Ball was on the court running point guard. So now when Josh Giddey sits down, does he turn into Kobe? Is it Ayo, right? Are you going to stagger now kind of Kobe more with the bench unit where we saw Josh Giddey do that at times? Like, that's going to be the interesting thing to see how this balances in that second game, But overall, like I said, nothing to be worried about. We got plenty of guards. One thing that we got is a surplus of guards. We got 9 guards out of a 15-man roster. We're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. It just comes down to who's going to run it, who's going to operate that point when Giddey's sitting. But listen, we saw Kobe do it last year. We saw Ayo do it at times last year. We got the players to do it. Ain't no reason to worry about that. But one of the things that also came out yesterday is the NBA Cup courts got released. So many will remember that during NBA Cup games, that the court, you have a custom court there. It was the first time that every team in the league had a custom court. And the Bulls court is very much still what it was last year. Now, where it was all very red last year, they added more black on the borders. And they added more kind of red, different color tone red circles, like circles within circles. Every team has it, but with the Bulls, it's a red and a deeper red. I actually really like this NBA Cup court. I like it a lot, actually. I think it's a really solid design for the Bulls. I love how they have the NBA Cup trophy on it as well. And one thing that I do want to see with this is that we had the rumored Bull City edition jerseys. which I actually think they're scheduled to wear in early November. So we're not too far away from seeing the City Edition jerseys, but you wear the City Editions in your NBA Cup games. And I want to see how the jersey complements the floor, right? Because they're kind of made to go together. Last year, the Bulls had that black jersey, and the court was very red. Now, if I remember correctly, the City Edition jerseys are like white and gold this season for the Bulls. So just be interesting to see how that looks on this red and black court with some gold for the trophies. But overall, solid design. You guys can let me know how you feel about it down below. But that's my time, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me personally at CEO Haize on every podcasting app or on every social media app, I should say. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And just as a reminder to you guys, Locked On Bulls now has a newsletter. It's a daily newsletter. It's your one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Bulls newsletter. I'll see you guys later tonight after the game, man. Love you guys. Go Bulls. See you Reds, you guys. Peace.